All right, for those that don't know me, I am Dr. Amanda, and I am a lifestyle medicine physician at Adkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, where we are helping women who have diabetes and high blood pressure get off medication safely and live out their God-given purpose. Well, today, though, we're talking about something that you may not actually be thinking about. Maybe you can think like this: you're doing everything right, you're eating better, you're trying to exercise, you're cutting back on the sugar, but you still feel exhausted. You feel inflamed and stuck. Then we need to have a different conversation, because what if the issue isn't just what you're eating? And you know that I love talking about nutrition. And if it's not what you're eating, then what could it be? What if your body isn't in a state where you can actually heal? I see this unfortunately all the time. Patients come to me so frustrated. They say, I'm trying, Dr. Amanda, I really am trying. And, I believe them, but beneath the surface, their body is under a constant stress. And so we dig deeper, try to figure out what's going on. And it's not just emotional stress, which we all can have during this day and time, right? It's more of the physiological stress. And that stress shows up as elevated blood sugar, higher blood pressure, your weight just won't budge, constant fatigue, and poor sleep. And here's the part where most people never were taught. You know my saying of, you cannot out exercise a bad diet. Well, what if you could not out exercise, not out eat a dysregulatory nervous system? Yes. So our body actually has two modes when you think about it. So it has survival mode and healing mode. And unfortunately, most of the time we are in survival mode in more ways than one. And if your body feels like it's under a constant threat, it will always choose survival every single time because it wants to preserve self. And that is understandable, right? So today we're going to talk about the hidden drivers that are quietly blocking your progress, okay? And if it's not, Dr. Amanda, if it's not eating and it's not exercise, what could it be, right? Because that's what I talk about most of the time. Love talk about nutrition, love talk about exercise, because that's what I do. But then there's a few things that we may be missing, and that is stress and sleep. Because once you understand this, everything starts to make sense. So before we go deeper, though, I want to make sure that those that are watching, whether it's live or the replay, don't forget to like this video, share this video with your friends. And you can also put questions in the chat along the way. And I will be looking down, like if I see any comments that come through. If you have questions, I will answer those in real time. Or if you have questions, I'll come back and answer those afterwards. So don't forget to do that, okay? So sleep and stress. What in the world, right? So again, I love talking about nutrition and exercise, but most of the time when I really see someone that's trying and doing it all, that these two things are missing. So that's why in lifestyle medicine, we look at the 6 different pillars. So it may not be just the one thing. And I say most times, 90% of the time, patients, they really need to work on, and we all do, nutrition. And so that's why I talk about nutrition most. But then there's a small subset of patients that I work with that have really been working with their nutrition, really been doing their exercising, and we need to focus on their sleep and their stress. So I was like, wait, I should come and make sure others know that this can be a possibility of why they feel like they are not healing. Okay, so we're going to break down a few simple things here. So remember, our body is incredibly intelligent. Okay, so when it senses stress, whether it's like work pressure, family stress, emotional stress, poor sleep, overscheduling with the family or anything else, and even internal inflammation, it releases a hormone called cortisol. And I know we've heard of cortisol, and cortisol in itself is not bad. So we need cortisol to wake up in the morning. We need it for energy. But the problem is where most people live with a chronically elevated cortisol. Okay. We don't want to have that chronically elevated cortisol because when cortisol stays high, it sends very specific signals to our body. Okay. And it tells our body to store energy and don't burn it. We don't want that. We don't want to just store energy and not burn it, right? Because what does that lead to? It leads to higher glucose levels. It leads to higher blood pressure, that weight gain that we're trying to get rid of, and that all so important inflammation. And remember, we talked about before how chronic inflammation leads to chronic disease, and we don't want that. So when you're eating better, but your body still isn't storing, you're exercising, but your body is still holding on. And then we add in sleep debt. What in the world? Okay. So sleep is when your body repairs tissue, balances hormones, improves our insulin sensitivity, because we talked about that I believe last week or two videos ago, where we talked about improving insulin sensitivity because of the insulin resistance that leads to all these sorts of things, and lower inflammation. So it was funny that my daughter was asking, why does our body need sleep? Are we going to need sleep when we go to heaven? Does Jesus sleep? And so we're like, sleep was just on our mind this week. So I was like, we got to talk about sleep. So I was like, children will ask some interesting questions, won't they? And so I was like trying to explain to her why it's important for her to go to sleep. Why it's important for her to make sure she goes to sleep on time. She is not a morning person. She's more of a night owl. But I try to get her in the bed and sleep. For those that know me, I like to sleep. I want to be in the bed. But there's, other things besides just the restfulness that you get from sleep, okay? Because when we don't get enough quality sleep, our body starts to interpret that as stress, okay? And even just one poor night of sleep can lead to the increase in insulin resistance, increase in our hunger hormones. So we're eating more, our ghrelin is, out of whack. It decreases satiety signals. My mouth is just like not wanting to work today. And then it raises cortisol. Okay. So now your body is more hungry and less satisfied, more inflamed, and resistant to weight loss. And that's very discouraging for me and all of my, patients. We just don't want that. Right. And I'm sure that you feel that way too, like you can be more discouraged. And most of the time we think, oh, I just need more discipline, and I can get this going. But again, the truth is that our biology is working against us, right? And not because you're failing. And we talked about that in another video. You're not failing. It's because your body is trying to protect you. And again, whether it's, our eating habits, our nutrition, our exercise or lack thereof, or lack of sleep. Whenever we have anything that causes our body to be off balance, it goes into the survival protection mode, and therefore it can't be in that healing mode. Okay, and we want our body to be healing, especially when we are asleep. Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about a patient that's wired and tired. So this may be you. Okay, or just in general, we're going to say, Q, Mrs. Q. Okay. She is exhausted, but she can't rest. Okay. She lays down at night, but her mind will not turn off. Okay. Wake up tired, push through the day, caffeine, Mrs. Q, caffeine, not to stay awake. Water. So I love my water. That, and taking a side note there, people always ask me, as a physician, I can't believe you don't drink coffee. And I was like, I've never been a coffee drinker except when I was younger and I saw like the head of that church and I wanted something hot and I just poured in like a gallon of sugar because I didn't like the taste of the coffee. I just wanted that sweetness. But anyway, over like during med school and residency, I was like, I don't want to be a person that depends on coffee or caffeine. So I would drink water. I would always have, a water bottle or one of those reusable cups, and we can, go around and get water anywhere. But anyway, back to Mrs. Q. I just thought about that when people always ask me about coffee and caffeine. But we don't want to try to push through when we're tired because of that. So it's a different thing. So we don't want to be hooked on the caffeine. So Mrs. Q wakes up tired, pushes through the day with caffeine, and then in the afternoon crashes, and then gets a second wind at night, right? Okay, she tells me, I feel tired all the time, but I can't relax. And she's like, I'm trying to eat better. I'm trying to, do my exercise routine. I'm cutting back on certain foods like my sugars and my processed foods, but nothing's working. And why? She's like, why is it not working, Dr. Amanda? And it's because her nervous system is staying in a state of alert, like, oh, and it doesn't feel safe. Her body does not feel safe enough to rest. Okay. So we want to make sure our body feels safe to rest. And when it doesn't feel safe to rest, then our body is not going to prioritize healing. Again, it's going to prioritize the survival mode. Okay. So instead of doing what's supposed to happen in our body when we're out sleeping, it's not repairing, it's not burning the fat that we want, and it's not balancing our hormones. Instead, we're getting more fat storage, more disruption of our hormones, and persistent inflammation. Okay. And this is the part that changes everything. Healing doesn't begin when you try harder. Healing begins when our body feels safe enough to let go. Think about that. Healing begins when our body feels safe enough to let go. That speaks to my spirit. That's a whole different story. Like talking about reading scripture, meditation, and when we actually let go, put it in God's hands, I mean, that's when the healing is going to begin, right? So just to say, our body, when we begin to feel safe enough to let go, our body will start to heal. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Again, I want y'all to drop that in the chat because that speaks more ways than one. Okay. Healing begins when your body feels safe enough to let go. Your mind feels safe enough to let go. I need y'all to put that in the chat because that's some good stuff right there. Man. Okay. All right. So I want to challenge a belief that many high achieving driven people carry. And that is the belief that rest is unproductive, rest is lazy, I'll rest when everything is done, or as one of my patients said, I'll rest when I'm dead. What? No, but the truth is, rest is not a reward. Rest is a requirement. Okay. We are required to rest for our body to, again, rebalance our hormones, for our blood pressure to improve, for our glucose to stabilize, and for inflammation to decrease. Okay. And that's, brings me to another story of mine where I was never one of those people in college or med school that pulled all nighters because I was like, I have to sleep, I have to be ready and refreshed, ready to go in the morning. And it would be like if I, studied and like read like right before I went to sleep, and then I was more refreshed and awake and to be able to remember those things than I believe if I stayed up all night. I'm trying to think if there's ever a time, maybe once, but usually no. Some people like, yeah, I gotta stay up all night. How can you go to sleep? I would not be able to function if I did not sleep and then had to go and take a test that really needed to work my mind, right? So again, rest is not a punishment. It is actually a requirement again. And that was another thing too that I was reading today in our Rise and Shine. So again, those that are not on a Rise and Shine that follow us, we are on there every single morning, 6 a.m. I do the replay because it's 6 a.m. Eastern time, but with Dominion City Church with Dr. Una, who is a wonderful, wonderful mentor of mine. And it just like to hear, and we were going over Proverbs 24. And then one of them was like extra rest, extra sleep, and the folding of hands will lead to poverty. But one reflection I had about that was like, well, we have to sleep. And the key word there was extra or more. So we don't want to necessarily do more sleep or more rest, because then that leads to what we do not want, poverty in so many different ways. But still, rest is required. And that is what I put like in my notebook. Like, rest is required, but it is not necessarily that we need to do extra and more, because again, that had to speak to me because I love to sleep. I will do more and more and more. Okay. So rest, again, not a punishment. It is not a reward. It is a requirement. Okay. Our body needs the rest. So rest is what allows progress to actually happen. Okay. If our body never gets a signal of safety, it never shifts out of that survival mode. And again, we want to go out of the survival mode into the safe mode for healing. Okay. And we don't want to necessarily feel like we have to be more disciplined and still feel stuck. Okay. So because we've mastered this effort, but not recovery, our body still needs both. We still need both. Okay. We need that both rest and recovery. So we need the survival mode and we need the safe mode to actually make this work for our body. Okay. So you're like, okay, Dr. Amanda, I get what you're saying, but how does that actually work? Like, how am I going to actually make that work for me right now? Right now. Okay. So simple, practical steps that you can do. And I was like, you're going to say, I've heard this before. I try to do this. I've done that. I heard it. But are you doing it now? And are you trying to be consistent at staying consistent? Because remember, our body likes consistency. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but our body likes consistency. Okay. So we want to create a consistent sleep routine. Okay. So we have this time where we get up at the same time and we go to bed at the same time, no matter if it's, weekdays, weekends, vacations, whatever it may be. So we want to try to keep our body on that same cycle. And one day I'm going to come out here and talk about time zone changes, because that can do something on your body. I was telling my sister the other day, I was like, I'm going to need time to adjust to the new time zone. As my body continues to have more and more birthdays, it's like the more those time zones get to me. but I'll have to talk about that on a different time. But consistent sleep routines. Okay, so going to bed again, waking up at the same time, and this actually helps to regulate the cortisol, the melatonin in our blood sugars, and then we want to set a winding down time. Like, even my phone, like, goes out at a certain time to actually help to remind me to go to sleep. So dim lights, reducing our screens, doing something that's calming. And I had to send a message to a friend of mine one time because I was like talking to her after we went to an event. And it's like a little bit later than my normal bedtime. So my phone like cut off, and I thought I went through like a tunnel or something like that. And it, cut off and was in a bad area. But then I looked at my phone and I looked at it again. It said sleep mode. And when it goes into sleep mode, I forget how to take that off. So it's like, I had to send her a message the next day because I couldn't, no texting, no talking. I'm sure it'll let me do emergency calls, but it was like, you're supposed to be asleep right now, and this phone is down. All right, so that wind down routine. So if you need to do that, so cut your phone off so you're not constantly picking up your phone, looking at that, trying to scroll through Facebook or YouTube or whatever it may be. You can set that time, and that will actually help your body to go into that signaling time that it's time for your body to start to wind down. Okay. And this will actually signal to your body it's now time to rest. Okay. And then when you wake up, you want to prioritize light exposure. So we've changed time recently, where we shifted forward, spring forward. Yeah. Forward. And so now it's a little bit later that the sun rises because we're in March at the time of this video. But so it makes it a little bit harder to get up because it's like trying to expose myself to light. But that's what you want to do. Try to expose yourself to the morning light. So when the light does come out, you want to try to open up the windows, look out and like have your eyes actually see that. And that actually lowers the cortisol at the right time. And it improves your energy and it supports better sleep for later. So try to really expose yourself to light in the morning. Okay. So even 10 to 15 minutes in the morning makes a big difference. Okay. And then at night, you want to reduce that brightness. So again, close the curtains, try to limit screens. And this helps your body to produce melatonin naturally. Okay, so we have that good melatonin that's there that helps us to go to sleep. Okay, and then we need to build in stress buffers throughout the day. Okay, so not just stress management, which I've talked about before, but stress buffers. Okay, so moments that you tell your body, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. Okay, so what does this look like? Taking long, deep breaths for 2 minutes, taking a short walk, like going outside. Like I said, I love doing that, especially after lunchtime, going out for like a 10-minute walk. You can do that. Laughing out loud, really a good belly laugh. You guys see some of my previous videos about belly laughing. In one of them, help with stress reduction. Um, excuse me, and taking a pause between tasks. So if you're working, like the watch that I have, like a smart watch will, tell me, okay, you need to stand up, it's been this hour, so you want to make sure you stand, to make sure you're like moving around. So that's making me pause in between different tasks that I may be doing. So these things will actually help you to go on. Okay. So you don't need an hour to do these things throughout the day, a couple of minutes, less 2 minutes for the breathing, or 10 minutes of walking, stepping outside, whatever you need to do. Okay. And again, it's more about consistency, and because these small things actually add up over time, and they shift your nervous system again out of survivor mode into that safe mode so your body can heal. Okay. And I alluded to this earlier, but we want to rethink about productivity. Okay. So productivity is not about doing more. So I'll talk about not staying up all night to study or anything like that. I would, do what I need to do and then go to sleep. But productivity is about having the body that can sustain what you're doing. Okay. I wouldn't have made it through school or residency training if I had to stay up all night, every single night, with what's going on. Like, it's crazy. And I tell people, I feel like now, I talk to other mothers also, where I was like, I feel like after 5 years, I finally came out of a fog because I was so like sleep deprived, trying to deal with, an infant and a toddler. And, some parents, you may feel the same way, like, oh my goodness. So we want to, that's a different story, different person to talk about, sleep during those years. But you can actually use that as an example about how you're not really that productive when you are not getting that sleep. So we want to rethink productivity. Again, it's not about doing more. It's about having a body that can sustain what we are doing, okay? This requires recovery, restoration, and regulation. Okay, take care of our nervous system, because our body will start working with us again once we do that. Okay, so we want to make sure we look at that. So what can we do? Again, practical tools that we want to incorporate. Create a consistent sleep routine. Go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time. Prioritize light exposure. Okay, so when we wake up in the morning, we want to try to get as much light as we can, preferably sunlight if we can. And then in the evening, make sure that we start to reduce that light exposure. Okay, so then the melatonin comes out. And then we want to build our stress buffers throughout the day, our buffers, where we want to make sure that we are doing our deep breathing, going outside for a walk, taking pausing between tasks, maybe walk up and down the hall, get, water, go to the restroom, whatever it may be, but just try to pause in between tasks. And then again, rethinking the productivity. Okay. So not about doing more, but about doing what our body can sustain. Okay. All right. So let's be clear. If you've been trying and you're not seeing the results you expect, again, you are not the problem. Okay. You just may be missing a key part of the strategy. And again, that's what I help my patients do. We don't just look at food. We don't just look at exercise. We look at stress physiology, sleep patterns, daily rhythms, so we can actually help you to actually help your body heal. And if you're ready for that kind of care, definitely reach out to me. Again, I'm Dr. Amanda at Adkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, and you can book your appointments. We're 100% virtual, licensed in 10 states, and we can help you even if you're not in those 10 states that I'm licensed in different ways. You can go to my website at www.dramandamd, so that's like dramandamd.com. And you better book your appointment because you're like, Dr. Amanda, I've been doing these things you talk about, but maybe I need some help with my routine. And I would love to support you on that. So reach out today, don't delay, and share this video with someone that you may know that also needs help, okay? So now we're going to think about, we're waking up, no longer feeling tired, but we feel refreshed. We're not just awake, but we're feeling restored. And our energy is being held steady throughout the day. No more ups and downs with the caffeine's ups and the afternoon crashes. Our body is responding again. Our body's blood pressure is improving. Our blood sugar is stabilizing. And the weight is finally starting to shift and come off. We're not in that storage mode. We're not in that survival mode. And it's not because we're pushing harder. It's not because we're trying to be more disciplined, but it's because our body is finally in a state where we can heal. Okay. We're no longer fighting our bodies. We're working with it. And that is possible. And it starts with that understanding that, again, our body is not broken. It's responding to the signals that it's given. Okay. So when we change the signals, everything else begins to change. Now, again, if this message resonates with you, share it with someone that needs to hear it because so many people are trying harder when they really just need a different approach. All right. So blessing and health, y'all. And I hope you have a great Thursday. And I look forward to seeing you next time.